How much do you believe this will change the world order?
Well, I think it's a really dark day for trade today. The president has gone ahead, and we're, as of midnight tonight, imposing tariffs against 3 of our closest allies, and they haven't missed a beat. They've announced that they're going to counter-retaliate. And then the question will be, does it stop there, or does it go further? But this is not a good day for trade. The WTO almost seems irrelevant in what's going on right now in the trade world.
Carl, do you believe that there is anything retaliatory that Europe can actually offer?
Europe will take retaliatory measures. That has already been announced, and I say the Canadians have talked about doing it dollar for dollar, and the Mexicans have done the same. So I think there will be significant or equal measures taken by all of these so-called allies and so-called friends of the United States, and that will clearly have a detrimental effect on the trade situation.
I guess, Wendy Cutler, there is nothing surprising in what Donald Trump has announced today. As we said, it was in the article, the interview he gave 30 years ago, and this is fulfilling an election promise. He's done it for the domestic market, and he's a politician who's stuck by what he said.
That is, of course, true, although we are perhaps somewhat unused to sort of U.S. policy being dictated by sort of old interviews in Playboy magazine. And there was the belief for a long time, or there was the hope for a long time, that some sort of sense and some sort of sanity would prevail in Washington. But what we see now is the president forging full speed ahead. With the
Let me just bring Wendy Cutler in on that one, because I guess for Americans this is not a surprise. This is exactly what he was voted into office to do.
Well, in some ways it was a surprise, because I think many thought this was a threat to get our trading partners to come to the table to make concessions. And it hasn't worked out like that. And so I don't know if this whole strategy is really well thought out, particularly when our workers and our companies and our consumers face counter-retaliation from our major trading partners, including our allies.
There are many people who have suffered from global trade, something that we know supporters of Trump have expressed their frustration about over the last few years. Is this the result of a very imperfect solution?
I think
well, yes.
I'm just going to stick with Wendy, and then I'll come back to you, Carl. Sorry, Wendy.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, we're losing the support for trade in the United States. That's evident. But the question is, how do you build that support up again? And in my view, taking actions under Section 232, a statute which has just been used less than 3 times in the past 50 years, is just not the way to go. We need to find a way to work with our trading partners, particularly our allies, to improve the trading system and to find a way to level the playing field for our exports and our investment. Right. We should be working in partnership, not in confrontation.
So, Carl Bildt, just tell us what Europe has to do at this point, because they can scream protectionism, but as soon as you offer your own retaliatory move, you're essentially joining in. Our commentator in the film said, America's going to win this one.
I don't think that's going to be the case. There's not going to be any winners. And then it's a debate whether who's going to lose the most, but we are all going to lose. And the risk is, of course, that when these measures are taken, as they will be taken by the European Union and by Canada and by Mexico, that Trump will go even further. And then we are in a really serious situation. Because the reality is, of course, that free trade and trade has been contributing to jobs and growth and prosperity. And if that trade machine slows down, it's going to hurt all of our economies, including the U.S. economy, no doubt.
You think the U.S. will be as big a loser as any of the allies?
It's going to be different in different sectors, needless to say. But the rational policy, in my opinion, if there is a problem, which there is, with steel overcapacity in China, the rational policy would, of course, been for the United States to work together with key allies like the EU, like Canada, like Mexico, to address the Chinese problem. Instead, this is a full-scale assault coming on top of a lot of other things, has to be said. Paris and Iran nuclear agreement and things like that. A full-scale assault against those that the United States should cooperate with to address the real issues that are there in the global economy and global trade.
Wendy Cutler, we know that your president enjoys brinksmanship and he likes deadlines. Do you think any of this will materialise, or is he just trying in his inimitable way to bring the allies to the table and make them sit up?
Well, he's already going. This isn't brinkmanship because he's putting these tariffs into effect. And so the question will be is, can we avert more retaliation, and can we get both sides to come back to the table and maybe come to the table with other countries and try and deal with the overcapacity problem in steel and aluminum. Look, those are real problems. A multilateral solution has been tried at the OECD. It has not succeeded. I think we should come together with our partners and figure out a way to elevate those discussions, to inject some urgency and address the problem that will allow us all to lift this our tariff increases.
Okay, so when you say oversupply, and I can see Carl Bildt is nodding too, are you really saying it's fine to do that to China? You know, the problem is all with China, but it isn't a problem with anyone else. It isn't a problem with the allies. I mean, is that the way we should respond to this, Carl Bildt?
Yeah, I think the overcapacity problem in steel that is there is clearly the Chinese problem primarily. No question about that. And that has been recognized by the European Union as well. And there has been a willingness from the European side to work with Americans on that particular issue. But that doesn't seem to be the Trump administration approach. They want to go alone, and they are taking measures primarily at the moment, strangely enough, against their close allies. And then on top of that, using provisions of national security, saying trade with the European Union and trade with Canada and trade with Mexico is a threat to the security of the United States. That's plainly, it's beyond bizarre. It's slightly insulting.
Carl Bildt and Wendy Cutler, thank you both very much indeed. Well, we're staying with this. In Washington is Kayleigh McEnany, the spokesperson for the Republican National Committee. And I promised you we'd try and give you a little bit more sense of the politics behind this move. And Kayleigh McEnany, you've heard from our previous speakers, there may be gains in the small term, but this sounds like a disastrous path that your president is setting not just the allies on, but America itself.
Well, we think that this will bring a lot of success for the American worker, and that is this president's primary goal. You know, we have hemorrhaged jobs. Going back to 2000, we've lost 54,000 steel jobs, 50,000 aluminum jobs. And just with the announcement of these tariffs, we already have factories saying that we're going to open our doors, aluminum smelters, steel smelters coming back to the United States so that we can produce products again.
Yeah, but you're going to make some gains in iron and some gains in steel. The US Trade Partnership Body has estimated a net loss in the US economy of 146,000 jobs. So you bring back a few here and you lose many, many more.
Well, we don't see it that way. And also, you know, it's worth mentioning the national security component of this, because this was, after all, a 232 action. We're taking this measure for national security purposes primarily. And what that means is, you look overall, we had 23 aluminum smelters. That's gone down to just 5. Of those, only one of them, only one, produces the kind of high purity aluminum we need to build fighter jets. Otherwise, we're dependent on China or the United Arab Emirates for this product. So it's just a national security aspect that's really important to this, and we think it's a measure worth taking.
Come on. Nobody really believes the national security argument, except in terms of what China is doing, in terms of how they are flooding the market. This is not about the EU. This is not about Canada or Mexico.
No, it's about all of that. It's certainly about the national security component, because aluminum and steel are big components in submarines, for instance, and aircrafts and weapons of war. It's very important that we have the ability to produce that in the case of a national emergency. But also, it's an equity issue. It's the fact that, you know, when you send a car to the EU, for instance, you know, we're hit with a 10% tariff, and then on top of that, a value-added tax of 19%. And then when a car is sent to us, it's a 2.5% tariff. We have the lowest tariffs in the world, and that's not sustainable for our workers or our economy.
Yeah, but you know it's not just about the workers, because the workers are also consumers, and everything becomes more expensive for people to purchase goods, and then jobs are lost, and it has a knock-on effect. I mean, broadly, this is a political move that is going to do a lot of harm, isn't it?
Well, we don't see it as political at all. We see it as primarily economic. You talk about prices going up, and on a can of beer, for instance, it might go up by 1 penny, is what Peter Navarro was estimating. You know, this is one fraction of 1% of our economy. It's a very small sector that we're talking about. So we think that that small hit is certainly worth it in the long run, bringing back those jobs and bringing back those production capabilities.
Do you recognize that this is essentially an analog solution for a digital age, that the president talks about coal miners in West Virginia and he talks about factories in Ohio, and most people understand nowadays that this is not about jobs going abroad, it's about jobs going to automation, it's about machines taking over and having to reskill the workers. You can't keep old factories open forever.
Well, there are a myriad of factors, and you talk about automation. That's certainly a component to why we've seen manufacturing jobs hemorrhage. But in addition to that, the inequitable playing field when it comes to trade has been a big component. You know, we've seen since China joined the WTO, jobs hemorrhaging. Since NAFTA, we've lost 1 million jobs in this country. So something does need to change. And I would also note President Obama hit 9 countries with the steel tariff, and you know, no one was crying trade war then. They were saying he's leveling the playing field. So this is not an unprecedented action in terms of leveling tariffs on steel.
Kayleigh McEnany, really nice of you to join us. Thank you very much.